Oh, is it?
What's your name? Okay, so we are live, folks. Okay, so I'm going to call to order the regular council meeting for March 28th. And I'm going to start with my opening remarks, which I'll keep fairly brief. 1 second. I'm up. So I just wanted to kind of let everybody know that I did attend the Brunswick Multicultural Council's 40th anniversary celebration this past Friday on March 24th at the Beaverbrook Art Gallery in Fredericton. And I'm really glad I attended for a number of different reasons, but they have grown over time to that they have 20 member agencies around the province now, and they're all working together to help newcomers and members of the multicultural community to fully participate in society. And you know, when we talk to employers in our area here, many employers state that they have concerns and share concerns on hiring and retaining staff, and a lot of them are saying that the percentage year over year of employees that they have, where the employees are originating outside of Canada, continues to grow, and some of them even reporting this year up to 50% of their staff now. So I think it's important, I guess, from my perspective, we're fortunate in our community that we have one of the 20 member agencies, highly active and growing. So the Multicultural Association of Carleton County has grown and expanded kind of what they're offering in their support system is to newcomers to our community. So I already have been in contact with them, and Laura is working with me to set up a time for them to come and present to us, to council in May. So I'm hopefully we'll target May. That's, I think, what it looks like now. But just to give everybody an overview of what they do, how they've grown, and sharing, and most importantly for us, to share the challenges that newcomers are faced with when they're moving into our community. So again, I feel it's important that we explore further as a group, you know, what their challenges are, and so that we're aware as policymakers what we could be doing to help with that. And it's in particular retention. It's one thing for them to get here, but to keep them here is a whole other different story. So I look forward to that. And I will say on that note, I frequently visit the Medexicag Consolidated School, and I did ask them because I've noticed over time the increased number of students, and they did confirm for me that they're up to 120 newcomer students, and they represent 30 countries out there now. So you can see and certainly feel in the schools the drastic change. And I know Townsview, I didn't get theirs in time for tonight, but I know theirs is similar. So there's certainly a huge growth, and I look forward to hearing from the MAC that's locally supporting that. And that's all I have for opening remarks tonight, because we have a very full agenda. So move on to approval of the agenda, which I'm going to, I guess, ask Laura. We do have a few changes.
We do. There's 3 revisions. So in addition to add item 10.8, tender results regarding a truck tender. The second addition is to add item 10.9 to award the tender for the truck. The third item is to revise item 12.2 from personnel to land.
Okay, so could I get a motion that the agenda for the regular public council meeting dated March 28th, 2023 be approved with the following changes: adding item 10.8, tender results, and adding item 10.9, awarding the tender, and changing item 12.2 from personnel to land. Lead Councillor Williams on the motion and seconded by Councillor McCartney. Any questions on? Everybody ready for the question? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any contrary, please say nay. Motion carried. So next item is declaration of conflict of interest. Does anyone have any?
I have a conflict with
Yes, sir.
10.1.
Okay. Noted. So right before 10.1, we'll dismiss you, Councillor Brand. Okay, so moving on, we've got approval of the minutes from February 28th, 2023. Does anybody have any questions on those minutes, or do we have a motion? Is anybody ready to make a motion to approve?
Motion.
Okay, so Deputy Mayor on the motion, seconded by Councillor Bradbury. Everybody ready for the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those contrary, nay. Motion carried. We have a second set of minutes today, which is approval of our minutes from our special council meeting we had March 21st. So do we have a motion from the room to approve as distributed?
I'll move it.
Okay, Councilor Brown, Councilor Bradbury in a second. Everybody ready for the question?
Okay.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, say nay. Motion approved. And then we have, I guess, we have some business arising tonight out of those sets of minutes. CAO, do you want to take that?
Sure. So there's two items. The first one is in regards to the zoning request from Mr. Milbury. You recall that we had sent it to the PAC and set a public hearing date. You'll find that was in your package, the memo that Jennifer Brown, who's here with us tonight, wrote in regards to an update on the process. So if you've had a chance to read, you basically, I guess, short and sweet is we're not going to move forward with the process of the rezoning process that we normally do. We're going to update this to our changes to the municipal plan and the zoning bylaw. So when Jennifer speaks a little bit later on, if you have any questions, she can answer it perhaps on that. But that is common. We did that last time where there could be some properties that don't quite fit. And instead of rezoning it, we'll make a list of the changes so that council will see them of what's actually going to happen. So other examples may be where we've had areas where they could be R1s on the current map. We'll just change them to R2s because that's what they are now. So we'll identify those properties and bring them forward as part of the zoning bylaw changes and municipal plan. Any questions more on that?
Jennifer put a good little letter together. Did everybody had a chance to read that? No questions on that?
Okay. The second thing were the PAC minutes from February 21st, so an older meeting. There was a couple items on the agenda. One was Brian Vernell had asked for a conditional use request. Again, Jennifer Brown had done a report, took that lead on the PAC meeting, and recommended approval with conditions that were on it, and PAC granted the variance for that. The second item on it was from Timothy Cook Construction. He asked for a temporary use and variance request for 201 Wright Street. So it's out back behind the mall. This would be another one of those changes that you'll see that when we move forward with the zoning bylaw, a tweak in the R2 area. Probably went too strict with it. So we'll talk later about what that may look like moving forward. Instead of the number, which I think it's 6, we may keep it at 6, but then have some additions that PAC could grant up to maybe 4 or 5, depending on what it decided. But for this application, it was to use 10 unit row house, which is basically what he has out there. The ones you see out there now are actually done with the old zoning bylaw, so it blends in well. So, and that also was granted by PAC with some terms and conditions. And that was it from the BAC meeting.
Okay.
So we need to,
Motion.
like, to have a motion to accept the minutes for that.
We have a motion to accept or to approval of the PAC meeting minutes of February 21st. Moved by Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Williams. Everybody ready for the question? No questions on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded say nay. Motion carried. Okay, so all done. That was it for the PAC section. So next up is TO update. Do you have a
I got a-
update tonight?
I do have
Yeah.
a short one. I know we have a long meeting, but
Yeah.
I thought I wanted to update on the town square project. So the last tender is out. Now it's posted on NBON. So basically anyone now can go on that to bid on it. The closing is April 12th. So it's 15 days, I believe, away. So just so you know, I went down and I talked to the businesses that are in that square area. Talked to most. I think that when I went down, not all of them were quite open yet, but there was only a couple that I hadn't reached out to. But one of the questions they had was, you know, when do you really want to do this? We could probably still alter the dates a little bit. You want to start it now, or do you want to wait till the fall? Most were actually all that I talked with wanted to, as soon as we could get on the ground, let's go. So as we know, the benches have been ordered, the pavers have been ordered through previous tenders. They're of course still not here yet, been here that long. So this one closes on the 12th, and then it'll come to council for approval then. So it's nice to finally get that last one done. So the only other thing I have, Councillor Rogers 2 or 3 times has caught me on this, so I was coming prepared tonight. 100 meters, a trail. UNBS after years, I gotta go on that now. So that, 100-meter length, so 300 feet. So that's why we were talking 100 or 300. It's 100 meters, 300 feet. So
Yeah.
I just scaled it roughly from it.
Very small, 300
Yeah.
feet small.
Yeah.
Okay. Good job, Celia.
I promise.
Okay, so moving on to correspondence, which we have quite a few pieces tonight, which we'll ask Laura to help us with, and starting with the Old Home Week.
So Mayor and Council received correspondence from the Old Home Week Parade Coordinator, Andrea Anderson. It says, I am writing to advise you of the date of the annual Old Home Week Parade to be held on Sunday, July 30th at 2 p.m. The theme of the parade is Take Me Back to the 50s. This year, we are also honoring the Ladies Auxiliary Woodstock Fire Department and have invited the 2 longest-standing members, Teresa Gibson and Angela McClellan, to be our parade marshals. As you are aware, this parade has grown significantly in the last few years, and due to safety reasons and to continue to improve this parade, we have adjusted the parade route. Participants will now line up at the Air Motor Center and make their way down Kirkpatrick Street and onto Main Street, and will proceed down to NBCC. We are grateful for the support of the town of Woodstock, as well as the Woodstock Police Force and the Woodstock Fire Department, in making this event a huge success. Your contributions are greatly appreciated.
So has this gone already through staffing? Like, do we need a motion? Or does this, are we recommending that this go to staff at this point, too? You know, what this?
So we are aware of it.
Okay.
We'll talk about it, and usually, especially with Toby, she will be aware of it.
So can we just say is everybody okay making recommendation to have staff do that and make sure there's nothing on our end? I mean, it's a regular thing to have the parade, so, okay, perfect.
And I believe the Santa Claus parade is usually the
Same route, yeah. So, moving on to the next one, the TAG project proposal.
Sure. So we received an email from Mrs. Savannah Sherwood. Good afternoon. I am reaching out seeking possible letters of support for our Safe Ride Keychains initiative on behalf of the Teens Against Drinking and Driving group at Woodstock High. We have tentatively been approved for grant money to complete this project with the CPA&B, but receiving the funds will be contingent on providing them with letters of support from community organizations and members. We would really appreciate if you would be willing or able to write a brief letter of support for our project and would be incredibly grateful. Thank you in advance for your time, Savannah Sherwood.
So there's additional information that you guys had in your packages
Yes.
that hopefully you read on this project as well. I'd certainly say from my perspective, I have no problem with writing a letter in support of this. I think it's a great initiative, but I will see does anybody have any questions on that? Do we have somebody that would like to make a motion for us to give us permission or staff permission to write a letter of support for the Woodstock High School TAD group for this?
I'll move we
Perfect.
write a letter of support.
So moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Bradbury. Looking ready for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, nay. Motion carried. It's a pretty easy one. Okay, Laura, the next one, the Vinnie Day Memorial Parade. Lots of parade.
So we received an application submitted to Mayor and Council from the 318 Woodstock Army Cadets for a street closure from Emerald Street to Prince Albert Street on April the 9th between the hours of 6:15 p.m. to 7:45 p.m. to conduct a memorial parade for Vimy Day in style to a Remembrance Day ceremony.
So essentially, before we approve this, do we need staff to review this, or staff reviewed this and confirm that that's
It's
good?
very similar to
Yeah,
what happened
our
with
regular-
Remembrance Day, so I will
So
add
good with that one.
one thing you notice that in the package too is also they put the street closures, so this actually would apply to the parade that we just did, the other parade, Christmas parade, every
Mhm.
parade that we do. Notice that in the policy refers to usually council and staff if they're okay, but the little catch is with designated highway, which what these parades are partially on. So there's a gentleman by the name of Peter Wood, which would DTI. Basically, as long as us or the applicant, we probably want to make sure that it gets done, so we'll probably do it with them. Just let them know the details, date, time, so if there's anything on there, so.
Fair enough. So just reminder when we hear, and for anybody listening, designated highway, we do have 3 in our community, one being Main Street that's commonly used for parade routes. So that's what Andrew's, or CIO Andrew's referring to. So our other 2 designated highways are Connell Road and Holton. So, okay, so I guess for our role in this, could we get a motion to agree for the route? So to close Emerald Street and Prince Albert Street on April 9th between the hours of 6:15 p.m. to 7:45 p.m. for the Memorial Parade for Vimy Day. Councillor Williams on the motion. Do we have a
I'll second
seconder?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Bellier. Anybody have any questions on this? So everybody, or I guess, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, nay. Motion carried. All right. So we're gonna move on to the next one, I guess, which is the, do we talk about, so this is 2, they have 2 really, right, with the purple?
Yes, this is
Yeah.
the NTH.
Okay.
So we are writing in order to request that the municipality of Woodstock be lit in purple to celebrate National Dental Hygienist Week as part of the Canadian Dental Hygienist Association National Put Your Purple On campaign. This is celebrated annually between April the 4th and the 10th.
Okay.
So they're asking if we would like to light up the Air Motor Center between those dates.
Have lots of purple.
Yes.
I guess I'll toss that out there to council. Does anybody have any questions or concerns on that, or does someone want to make a motion to accept that?
Why don't we-
It's for 1 week, right? Yeah. Yes.
I mean, I know we get a lot of requests for colors and things like this. How is anybody gonna know that this is oral
that day.
hygiene?
Well, usually along with this, we would notify,
We would have a notice.
a
to the
notice that would
public.
go out, and Toby Perry would put that out on our general newsletters.
I wonder if it wouldn't be fun in the future where we get so many of these to have a sign.
Ah,
So if we make a
yes.
decision, it's always gonna be the Air Motor Center. That when we're gonna light something up, it's gonna,
Instead of
here,
or-
right? Or the library or whatever, whatever it's gonna be. I know we can't do the library, you know what I mean? Wherever. And we have a sign and we literally just change it out about, it is purple this week for.
Mhm. Yeah, we
what
have
is it,
talked
oral health for total health.
about how to kind of handle all these requests, because even though there is technology to switch lights in a blink, we don't really have that with our lights, so it's like a manual process of switching out light bulbs right now to different colors, so,
Greg is getting the ones for the, just for the front, like over the door, so having it for the whole building. I know the Air Motor Center has them at their
Yeah.
entrance too, there's a few that they do,
they
so.
switch out, but
Greg's getting the same ones for him.
maybe on this note, I mean, obviously, for this, we could potentially go with the lights, but could we suggest that or put that forth to staff to come back? Is there something else we could do that's a sign that could have information as to what it's being lit for, that could be
Yeah.
up somewhere that might be easier and a little bit more informative?
It'd be nice, yeah, honestly, it'd be nice to add a sign to the Air Motor Center anyway, about events that are going on.
And this one that's come in,
Yes,
I'm just gonna say, it's not even addressed to the mayor, it's not even addressed to the town of Woodstock, or,
Yeah.
it's a form letter that's sent to every municipality across Canada.
Yeah.
That,
yeah, so, and again, we've not always agreed
yeah.
in the past for all of these, because at the end of the day, it is effort for the staff. So we can, consider, do we need to do this one where we've got, I'll follow that up with another request, after this. So, we've talked about this in the past, that we get a lot of these requests, and how many do we want to accept? And so we don't have to accept this one if everybody's feeling we've already accepted, 2 so far, but.
Wasn't the one last week, purple too?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Or no.
Yeah, that one was more of a proclamation to,
For just for that day. on
yeah,
the
for that
26th.
day, but
Yes.
again, it's still, I'm with Councillor Brown, we get a lot of these requests, and some of it is the ones that come in blanket that aren't necessarily tied to a specific community-based association or organization, whether we have to kind of do this for all of them. We need to think about that, so. So if no one wants to make a motion, that's okay, we can just file it, and,
Do we already have the purple lights? Or we have to
well,
buy
we have
purple
all
lights?
of the color lights, because we've lit,
Because you just have like
we've lit them in every color.
Wasn't the motion already made?
Not for this, no,
That was on the-
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no, there is no motion on the table yet, so if no one wants to move forward with this one, we do not have to.
I think without a sign, no one's gonna know what the purple's for.
Okay, so we're gonna pass on this one, we'll just
Yeah,
accept it and file it, and
Well, I think we should set a precedent too, like, if you're not actually naming the mayor and council of this municipality, then just like Lauren Rand said, it's just it's a blanket one, so.
we can just accept the correspondence and, okay,
The one for dyslexia?
Yes.
They actually have a sign.
Yeah.
Mark it
Yeah.
down.
yeah.
And it's a local organization doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a fair way to look at it moving forward as a group. I mean, usually it doesn't matter, we'll always read it because it's correspondence, and that's the normal standard thing to do, is to read it into, so it's recorded, but we can certainly kind of as a group make a rule moving forward if there's no local ties or local association that as a rule we wouldn't approve it. Okay, so on that note, the next one is Lyme Awareness 2023, which I'll let Laura read this and then I have a few thoughts on it.
I am writing on behalf of the New Brunswick Lyme Disease Association, Inc., Lyme NB, to ask if you would kindly consider proclaiming May 2023 as Lyme Awareness Month, much like in other countries in the world, including Canada. I have attached a draft proclamation in both official languages for your consideration. We are also asking if you would consider lighting up a structure of your choice in your municipality during May 2023 with green lights or a green spotlight. This lighting would follow the example of other Canadian municipalities who have implemented this practice, lighting up bridges, towers, flagpoles, fountains, and other structures as a visible sign of Lyme awareness. This could begin on the day of the proclamation and continue for a period of time that would work for the community. As you know, awareness is the first step in preventing what can become a debilitating disease if not caught early. Unfortunately, too many New Brunswickers, some from your region, are suffering today due to a lack of appreciation of the potential seriousness of a tick bite. Thank you for considering this request. Mike Allen, Vice President of the New Brunswick Lyme Disease Association, Inc.
Okay, so on this one, we received this letter actually a few weeks ago. We had some conversation at the public safety committee around just how we're going to communicate with the public, and I'll let this be known now. It is our intention to do some bulletins, and we've agreed as a committee to take that on this year, hoping that maybe staff might be able to carry it forward, and we're looking at doing them probably at least 2 or 3 this year, the first one coming out being in May. So when I saw this, I do know that we have had an increase in deer population in our area over the years. Ticks are more prevalent in New Brunswick. That continues to be a growing problem. So it is a public safety, and we kind of agreed as a committee that we could, instead of lighting a building up, our first bulletin that goes out in May will be in green, and we will acknowledge that the bulletin is in green in recognition of Lyme awareness, and we will have some information in that bulletin about Lyme disease, about tips and tricks to help prevent deers and ticks, because I do think there's a lack of kind of awareness in our area and in our province in general. You go to a province like Nova Scotia, who dealt with that issue a lot sooner than maybe we have, and they have communicated heavily in their population. It seems to just be they're better aware of what you should do if you're out walking in the woods and things like that. So I think if everybody's okay with that, we would respond to, and I guess it was, his last name right. Yes, it was Mike Allen, and we can respond to him and let him know this is how we want to acknowledge it, and I'm sure he'll be fine with it. Whether we need to do the proclamation, I guess, is up to council. We can do that if we want, or we can just acknowledge it by way of the bulletin. I do have a proclamation here in case that's what we want to do. So those are my thoughts. But I will defer to anyone else if they want to speak on that. Maybe Councillor Brown, being part of or the chair of the Public Safety Committee. I guess you and I did have a conversation. So are we still kind of in agreement with that?
I have no problem with proclamation either. It's our focus for that month. So really, I'm good with proclamation.
Okay. So do I have a motion to read the proclamation? Or I guess we didn't have a motion for that. We just have the proclamation.
Right.
But we need a motion, correct?
To read
Yes.
that? Yes.
That's what I thought. Didn't we just do that? Yep. So, Councillor Brown, are you making the motion? Do
Absolutely.
I have a seconder?
Okay.
Okay. And Deputy Mayor on the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, nay. Motion carried. So I will read the proclamation. So, whereas Lyme disease is one of the fastest growing vector-borne illnesses in the world, and whereas the population of ticks, the primary vector for the transmission of Lyme disease in New Brunswick and other parts of Canada, is growing and expanding in New Brunswick, and whereas the number of New Brunswickers suffering from Lyme disease is increasing from one year to the next, and whereas awareness plays a key role in making this disease known to the public, as well as the steps to take to prevent contacting the disease. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Trina Jones, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2023 as Lyme Awareness Month in Woodstock, New Brunswick. Okay. So, that's the last of our correspondence, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so into new business. Councillor Brown, right on cue there. He's dismissing for conflict of interest for item number 10.1, Planning Advisory Committee, nominating committee recommendation. Can CAO, do you want to go through all of that?
You have in front of you, the committee had met and reviewed the applications and came up with a group of 8 individuals that committee is proposing be the next PAC committee, if you will. You can see I have the names listed there. I'll read them aloud with their award and the year of service. So, or the length of term, sorry.
CAO, could you explain who was made up the nomination
Sure.
committee and also how many applications you did receive? Quite a.
Yep. So there was 4 people on the committee, Councillor Martin, Councillor Rogers, our clerk, Laura, and myself. Picked the names. I believe there was 14 applications, which was nice. Started off a little slow at first, but then picked up at the end. So it was nice to see a large group do it. So we had asked either 1, 2, or 3 years what we're looking to do. You can see most of them are 1 and 2 years, with the exception of one. We had picked 3. So after the first year is done, we can either have new names, if you will, or we can extend the current one. So just before I read the names, there's a couple of items. So the ones that aren't on the committee, we had some really good people, and when we send out the notices to everyone, we're definitely going to encourage them to apply again, because we feel we could have had more than 8, but we picked 8. It seemed to be a good number for the committee as far as making quorums, and you can get too many. So we went with 8. So and also in the near future, we'll have a terms of reference, if you will, for them, because it talks about making your chair, your deputy chair, who's taking minutes, how many will be on PAC, how long you can serve on PAC. So a number of things. Just basically, it's the rules of PAC, if you will. So, and Jennifer Brown, myself, will be putting that together. So, and we want to get this PAC, like, these are going to be active like now, especially with municipal reform being done. We wanted to relook at making sure we had a good, new, healthy bunch of PAC members, and also with the new zoning bylaw and municipal plan update, they're very much an important part of this process. So we'll be getting them all the information as quick as possible so that they can partake in the way that they'll want to. So I'll read the list, and this is what we're putting forward. So the 8 are, council had appointed 2 councillors before, or we had mentioned names. So Will Bellier from Ward 2, we have him down for 2 years. Councillor Jeff Bradbury, Ward 4 for 1. 2 existing members we were requesting stay on. Garth McCrae from Ward 4 for another year. Kelly Cummings Brown, Ward 4 for another year. Peter Kavanaugh, from Ward 4 for a 3-year term. John Morrison from Ward 4 for 2 years. Kirk Young from Ward 4 for 1 year. And Sarah Leach from Ward 2 for 2 years. So that's our team of 8, if you will.
That's the recommendation. So I will say, for those of us that did not participate, tonight is, for record, the first time everybody has seen this list otherwise. So it's for everybody to absorb, I guess, and hear. So obviously Councillor Brown's out of the room, but does anybody have any thoughts or concerns on this? In general, the next step would be to, if there's no specific concerns, we would take a motion on the entire committee. But if there's concerns over 1 or 2, or somebody's got questions, then we'd probably maybe defer this to committee of the whole, depending. But for further conversation, just depends on what everybody's got for questions. So I'll open up to the floor. I see you, yeah.
I'm just wondering what criteria was taken into account when choosing the individuals, especially where it looks like you've got 4 new members out of 14 applicants. Well, 4 new members plus 2 recurring. So what kind of things did you guys take into consideration with the applicants?
Well, some of it was, some of them attached even a resume with it, which was nice. It was basically what we knew, if we knew the person, and what their background was. I mean, we knew everyone for the most part. At least part of the committee may have known these members, or actually all people that have applied. So it was, we looked at everything that was submitted, and from what we knew of them personally, perhaps one knew the person better than the other. What would they bring to the table? Past jobs, perhaps, could have been an influence one way or another.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just curious if anybody, it looks like nobody from Ward 3 or 5 applied, or were there just better choices?
We picked, well, and like I said, there was a lot of good applicants.
Yeah.
No one, we had, besides Councillor Bellier, there was one person from Ward 2. There was another person from another ward, from
Ward
5
Ward 5,
that had
yeah.
applied. Besides that,
But
there was
nobody from 3.
no one from 3. We took that in consideration. We took that in consideration as well. So.
Yeah, well, I figured, because I could see the spread, but.
Yeah, and I will say, it is never easy selecting from, and we debated how many councillors should be part, what the number should be 8, should be 10. This is, again, the first year of this. We could get to, January of next year and decide that something needs to shift, or maybe we could welcome 10 if we continue to get good applicants and other people applying. Again, with the terms, that might not have been as common in years past with PAC to hold to these terms. So this at least shows that we're trying to assign terms that are a mixture of a 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, so that every year there's certain names that would come to the surface that would be up for either renewal and or replacement. So that's
why you'll see
yeah.
There's 3 of them 1 year.
Yeah.
They may not wish to stay on longer.
Yeah.
Again, 2 of them are returning PAC members that have been here a long time. Although it's important to have some of that experience stay on. But they could be the next 2 that perhaps are replaced down the road.
So to be clear, somebody that's new and has been assigned 1 year, they could technically at 1 year time, if they want to stay on, they can apply to stay on, or
Absolutely.
ask to stay on for
Yep.
another year.
Everybody that has the 1 year will be asked if they want to. So those folks plus anyone else that was on that list of that didn't make it this time, that they would be considered again. Plus there could be someone else new as well too.
I think every year the point is every time this annual comes up is that we're reposting to have people submit and apply again. So, any other questions, concerns, comments, I guess? Is everybody comfortable voting? Whether you're for or against doesn't matter, but are we at least comfortable putting motion on the table, or do we need to have further conversation? Okay, so did I get a motion to accept the names recommended by the PAC nominating committee? Councillor Leach and seconded by Councillor Williams. Everyone ready for the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, nay. Motion carried. Okay. I do have a few comments just before we move on, just on PAC in general. And I'm super excited we've gotten to this point with PAC, and we've at least kind of defined new members. And as Andrew alluded to, there is some work now to, reframe any policy documents around PAC. And I would add on top of that, it is going to be super critical for us to outline in as exact steps in plain English as possible what our processes are. And we also need to consider as a council, in combination with the CAO and Jennifer, even where the council wants to fit in the mix, because I think we do have some choice and some say in what, in when projects are coming. Do we want to know about them before they go to PAC, so we can at least understand what projects are going, and making sure we have clear kind of understanding of the projects and what the next steps are. But we've talked about making sure the steps are well identified on our website, that's good and clear for applicants, for us as council, and also for general public, so that they know what to expect. So I still think we're in step one of probably 3 that needs to happen and be extremely clear. So I will, if anybody else has any comments around that, they can certainly speak as well, but I'm happy to see us move step 1 at
Yeah,
least.
I'm just gonna follow your footprints there, Katrina, saying, yeah, I'd like to see the, clear, concise steps. Just having been on the PAC for a few years, we're getting bigger projects in here, so yes, I would like to see clear, concise, when I'm sitting there on the PAC making decisions, along with my other councilor Will Elliott and stuff like that, we need to have clear, concise, what we're looking at, what's the decision at hand going forward. That's what I would like to see.
Yep. Okay.
We're gonna let Councilor Brown back in.
Yeah, we can. We'll find out.
I'm trying to get Will's attention, but.
Yeah.
Wait,
That's all right.
Focus. I was thinking about you more.
Were you?
Yeah. It's working about you.
She was the only one that wanted.
We finished the meeting.
Let me know what you're saying.
Okay, so moving on to item 10.2, I guess. Jennifer, are you ready? You're up. We've got a presentation to us from Jennifer Brown from Dillon Consulting, just regarding the municipal plan. And as we all know, and for anybody that happens to be listening, we do have some open houses in regard to this tomorrow as well.
I'm just hoping that the clerk is able to pull up the presentation.
Oh, yes.
I don't think, have you sent it to me yet?
She just emailed it to you.
Oh, you did, okay. Perfect.
But before we begin, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Council, for having me this evening. This is where I spitball while we get the presentation up on the screen. We are having an open house tomorrow at the Air Motor Center. We're in Studio A, I believe. It's kind of, so we have an afternoon session from 1 to 3, and then another session from 6 to 8. This is the big chance to kind of get that preliminary information from your mouths and heads into my brain. So what I'm attempting to do is understand if what we're hearing through online engagement is matching what I'm hearing in person. Generally it does, however, typically we get more detailed information through in-person interaction. So this is not a presentation. The open house is quite literally, we have information set up around the room. I'm there to have one-on-one conversations with residents about what this process is, how we're going to move forward, their pain points, things they like, things they don't like, and how the municipal plan and zoning bylaw can respond to those things. Just looking at other possible summary points. If you're watching this evening, take a chance to check out the project website. There's 2 projects that will be hosted on a engagement-focused website, which is linked on the town's website. The municipal plan and zoning bylaw amendment project is live now. You have the option to fill out a survey as well as put your thoughts and kind of good places and notes and things on an interactive map. We don't have a ton of pickup on the map right now, but it is a really great interactive element because you're able to see what your community members are putting on the page and you're able to respond to it. So there's a good opportunity for discussion and interaction on that map. Just a quick note, the map is essentially a base map. So it's giving you the physical area and key kind of considerations. So you've got your road network, you've got some environmental features on there. There's no zoning, there's no future land use map, there's no clutter on that map. What we're really trying to get is what places are people interested in, what areas mean something to residents so that we're able to plan around them. I'll get to that here shortly. Ta-da.
Jennifer, before we get started, just in case anyone's listening, unless something changed, I have it as Studio 2, which is down
Studio
the,
2.
down the basement.
Yes,
On the
it's
backside.
the dog park
Yeah.
entrance.
In the back entrance,
Yeah.
yeah.
Are we able to make that full screen?
That won't show.
It's okay if not, but just for folks at home, it might be easier to see.
Review.
We can go back to home, there's something in the home bar.
There's a little, the button on the bottom that's right by the slide bar.
Right under Dylan Consulting.
Right over here, so that it can show to right there.
There you go.
Yep, good show.
There we go, perfect. So just to begin, just to go over essentially the process of this project. So this is an amendment. We're doing a series of amendments to the town of Woodstock, or the former town of Woodstock, municipal plan and zoning bylaws. So we're using those documents as the foundational document. We are doing this work through 3 phases. The first one we're kind of moving out of, and we're moving into this second phase, which is continuing the online engagement, doing that in-person engagement. We're preparing to do staff and stakeholder engagement. We'll be publishing a What We Heard report at the end of both online and in-person engagement. We'll finish the drafts to the municipal plan and zoning bylaw. When we move into kind of the end of April through July, that's when we start to hit legislative process. You've appointed your new PAC this evening. They will be a key element of moving this project forward. They'll review the municipal plan amendments, zoning bylaw amendments, the subdivision bylaw as well. And they are the first holder of the first big legislative public meeting. So the PAC meeting is a public meeting, it's a public process. So residents have an opportunity to see these documents, come to PAC, give us an idea of how well received or not well received the amendments are. And we can get a good run up on, hey, do we need to kind of pump the brakes here? Or are we okay? We need to make some slight changes. We'll get indication at that PAC meeting. So just a quick, if we can flip forward, just a quick update on the online engagement. We have a lot of visitors to the website. We're at about 1,200. The online engagement was launched March 16th. So it's a trickle. We're expecting though that after the open house, there'll be a bump in those numbers. I'll make sure you have an update on that for your next council meeting, so you're able to kind of make sure that this continues to be pushed. The plan is we do a little bit of online, we do in person, and then we allow folks to kind of come through with all of the information back to the online forum, to kind of get out what they might not have gotten out with me tomorrow. So 34 survey responses, again, these numbers are a little bit low. We'd like to be closer to like 400 or 500 range. There are some options to boost these social media notifications that we're working with town staff to get that done. Only 4 map comments. I think, again, this will boost up, especially once folks are able to see the large map in person. I think we'll see a lot of folks go back and interact with that map. I mentioned this already in terms of the Woodstock, the community open house tomorrow at the Air Motor Center, but just to give you an idea of what those 34 responses, kind of the hot topics that we're pulling out there. There's a lot of talk about rural character, which should not be a big surprise to folks. I think folks are really concerned about maintaining the rural culture of where they live. So we want to make sure that we acknowledge that, we hear that, and then we have to make a plan for how to address that, especially in areas that previously have not had a municipal plan or a zoning bylaw or any type of land use framework previously. So we've got a plan for that. We're hearing a lot about roads, which is something that you're going to continue to hear about, especially as you have now 2 inventories of roads, roads you own and a large amount of roads you don't, which is all of the roads outside the former town boundary. They're DTI roads, they continue to be DTI roads. You're now taking over more gravel roads, chip sealed roads, things like that. There'll be a lot of comments about that. There are already, they'll continue to come through. This is something with the province you'll need to make essentially a communication plan for, because there's some expectations and we need to understand how to communicate with residents on those. Amenities and things to do. We've had a lot of comments come through about great for young kids, looking for amenities as kids age, looking for amenities and things to do for young adults. Again, not a big surprise there, but this right off the top, that's what we're hearing. We'll switch slides there. Okay, so what I'm here for this evening is to give you a really high level overview of kind of what's going on land use wise and where we're headed in terms of draft approach that we're going out into the community and asking to essentially them to confirm if we're on the right track. Very high level overview. You have planned areas, unplanned areas, and then you also have a stakeholder community with the Woodstock First Nation. Very, very important community asset here, very good resource for planning for this community in Woodstock First Nation that we absolutely will be taking advantage of in terms of their knowledge and their familiarity with the lands in this area. In terms of plan areas, you've got 2 plans in place. Oh, one back. There we go. We've got 2 plans in place. You've got the South Central Carleton Rural Plan. You also have the former Town of Woodstock Plan. And then the LSC of Richmond, no planning, no regulation. Next slide. So in terms of how we're trying to understand what's going on within the new municipal boundary, we are relying heavily at this stage on assessment data. It's not perfect. It is a very sufficient starting point, however, for us to understand what these different areas, what's the main use in this area. So what you're seeing on this map, and we'll, if you can advance the slide here. What you're seeing in brown and green, the brown areas are classified as agricultural. The light green is indicated as resource use. So these are how these properties are assessed. What we're planning to do with this data is to give us some understanding of what should be the land use designation. So a land use designation prescribes essentially what's generally there, but also what's planned for the future. So when you look at a municipal plan map, that's where you get that classification of, the map in Schedule A called future land use. So that's what we're trying to glean from this assessment data. This, like I said, not perfect, but gives us a solid starting point. Go to the next slide. In terms of that South Central Carleton County, Central Carleton Rural Plan Area, Rural Plan. It's really split into two major zones. They've got Rural Resource 1 and Rural Resource 2. They're very similar. You've got some Commercial 1 and Commercial and Light Industrial. So when we look at this, we know that, okay, for the most part, these are rural areas. The difference between their Rural Resource 1 and Rural Resource 2 are essentially auto body type uses, where auto body shops can be, conditions associated with those. If we switch to the next slide, you then have your former town of Woodstock. You can see in both of these areas, what you're seeing in pink is the agricultural and resource lands. You see a lot of pink there. Obviously, the color jumps out at you. There's two things I want to highlight here. You've got a lot of resource type uses. So, meaning you've got a lot of agriculture. You've got a lot of woodlots. You have a lot of resource extraction type uses posed for some of these areas that we've seen before in that rural zone that we're talking about in Central Carleton County, and then also in the former town boundary. The other thing I wanted to point out is that purple strip is Connell. We need to have a new, not a new, but perhaps an updated approach for Connell. Connell now goes from being kind of the big box central area for Woodstock. Now it's positioned as the big box central area more on a regional scale, and there needs to be some amplification of what that means to the town. If we can go to the next slide. So in terms of the draft approach to land use designations, I really want to drive home the point that what is there is going to continue to be permitted to be there. So if you live in a rural area and that area has been, mostly farmland, some rural residential type uses, if you have a home with 4 acres of land and you've got chickens on your land and you have some goats, nobody's coming in from the town and telling you to get out, like chickens go, goats go, nothing. What's there is there. We have no legal ability to apply any of these rules retroactively. We also have no interest in taking away the rural character of this community. That's what the community in this region is built on and is backed on, and there's no intention for us to change any of that. What we would like to do is provide a little bit more permissiveness in terms of residential uses. We run up a lot in rural areas around people wanting to build a second home on their lot. If you've got the space, let's allow you to do it. Meaning two main dwellings on a lot, easily permissible, considering we're relying on provincial approval for any environmental constraints or things like that. We would also like to allow for more permissive home occupation uses. We're still kind of rebounding from COVID here. We know that people have decided to move to more rural communities. They want to have businesses on their property. What that looks like is, more intense the more rural it gets. We want to make some allowances for that. When I say allowances, it means that you're, in some cases where it's a very intense use, where perhaps there could be some conflict between you and your neighbor, we want to bring in a PAC. If this is an innocuous use, we're talking about, in your garage, you're storing some things, you're doing some sort of, small engine repair or something like that, we can just let you go with a development permit. We just want to know what's happening so we can make sure everything's good. The other thing is we are finding that the rural plan has a little bit of a restrictive kind of cap on your accessory building sizes. We'd like to allow for some of that restriction to go away. More land, larger accessory buildings, people have more stuff because they're living in a rural area, they need more equipment. We need to accommodate for that. We are looking at the application of the agricultural and rural resource land designation on active farmland, as well as active resource extraction uses. That can be anything from an active pit or quarry to an active woodlot. Caveat being, if you're doing something like a mine or a larger format quarry, we're going to set you up to essentially require a rezoning so that you would have to zone into a pit or quarry zone. This just directs policy-wise that what you're gonna look at when you look at something like a mine or a quarry. You'll have policy in the plan to rely upon for those decisions. The former LSD of Richmond, we're looking at really a mixture between that rural designation as well as the agricultural resource land. There's a lot of agriculture around the waterway. We want to make sure that that is designated appropriately. If folks are using their lands primarily for active farmland, we want to know about it. We also want to know if there's intention to move away from farming and if they're interested in subdivision, if they're interested in other types of development. Now's the time to let us know because we're planning for the future. We're going to change the slide there. Environmental protection is pretty straightforward. We're looking at wellhead protection areas, those buffers around waterlands, watercourses and wetlands, and any significant environmental features. Significant environmental features could be floodplains, steep slopes, anything we know is of a concern to the province. Map those, include those appropriately in land use designations and zoning. In terms of the residential designation, so we've got a bit of, this is again where I'm really trying to work out with the community what it is they're looking for. Right now you have one residential designation and it applies essentially, well, it's only obviously applied within the areas of the former town of Woodstock. Right now you're looking at an opportunity to say you have two types of residential. You have service residential and then you have unserviced residential, which is primarily rural residential. We know that rural residential requires 1 acre lot. That's not going to change. That's a regulation that's coming down from the province. We know that a 1 acre lot is not necessary within the town. It can easily be broken up. So there are two sets of kind of styles here happening. We know already from what we're getting kind of first blush is that folks want rural character to be preserved. The easiest way to do that is to ensure that unserviced development requires larger lot sizes and less dense housing types. So a single dwelling in a rural area, fine. A duplex, probably also okay. But once you get into row houses and multi-units, we need a special approach in those rural areas so as to not sacrifice that character that is so important. One more slide, yeah, perfect. So in terms of the commercial approach, you have a downtown core designation now. We're looking at keeping that, no changes there. I alluded to this earlier though, the general commercial designation essentially becomes a regional commercial corridor along Connell, and we'll use the general commercial designation to apply throughout the municipality where you have essentially commercial nodes. You'll see like a cluster of commercial type uses throughout the municipality. This is really common at intersections. That might be kind of detached from kind of a more continuous commercial pattern. We still want to allow those to grow to an extent. We also want to target those for more mixed use type of development, not overly regulate in those type of nodes, but still identify them as, because they're important contributors to the local neighborhoods around them. In terms of industrial, we're looking at really remaining the same there, applying, to apply to the industrial areas that are currently designated. We're also going to use that South Central Carleton Rural Plan to identify where they have industrial areas, apply it the same way. So that kind of gives you the overview, high level of the approach from a policy perspective. What we're looking at now is just a draft timeline. So we are behind. However, we're moving through engagement. Engagement's a really critical point here. You've gone from you have a large land mass for us to attempt to do outreach into. We need to get those engagement numbers up so that I can come back to you as council and you can feel comfortable that what I'm pitching to you is reflective of what the community is saying. What we have here in terms of draft policy is from best practice and my experience in working in this community and also working with Western Valley Regional Service Commission, understanding the general development pattern in this area. This is by no means a set in stone type approach. This is very much a starting point. So what we're targeting in terms of this work through and getting us ready is over the next month, really hearing from as many citizens as possible, preparing to start that legislative engagement process in early May. What that means for the community is they'll see a draft of everything we've come up with early May, and they have a full month to give us feedback on that draft approach before coming back to council. Council receives all that feedback, and then they're able to refer to PAC and set the public hearing date. That is also another opportunity to see if we need to pump the brakes, if we need to go back to the community. If people are really coming out and saying this approach does not work for us, we will know at that point. And then, the brakes come around the table and make that big decision. In terms of next steps, we're planning engagement, open house is tomorrow. And then we have stakeholder and staff engagement throughout the month of April. The what we heard report, which reports on the entirety of the engagement process, comes back to you at the end of April. Draft amendments are prepared for public review, like I said, by May. So that was a whole heck of a lot of information. I appreciate your time, and I'm very happy to answer any questions.
How long did we say the survey's open to?
We'll keep the survey open until at least the end of next week. So that's April I always say that I say Friday, but I always leave it open for stragglers until the following Monday. So we're likely looking at closing the survey on April the 10th.
You don't mind that's a holiday for some people.
Yes. So that works in our favor.
So I was gonna say, you might wanna leave it till the 11th, some people might be off work on the 10th.
Maybe they'll have time to fill it out.
Exactly.
I have to manually close it, so realistically, the first task on the 11th, when I get to the office at 8 o'clock is.
There you go.
Yeah.
How and where can we find that link to the survey?
It is if you go on the town's website, I'm just gonna pull up the town's website right now. If you scroll down to the events, I believe it is, what's happening, right under what's happening, it's the first tab there. Right now it's under public engagement and open house. We scroll down, it'll say Woodstock planning projects, social pinpoint. If you click on that, that is where the link is right now to the project website. The project website's also been shared on Facebook and Twitter.
Thank you.
Do you want me to?
Go for it.
I did have a couple of questions come to me, so I just wanted to say this while we're live on YouTube, that we have verified and everything. A lot of people were saying, but Quebec isn't part of Woodstock. Quebec is part of Lakeland Ridges. So we just wanted to call out the fact that there's a very small portion of Quebec, the southern part, on Hodgkin Road, I believe it is, or Pumpkin Lane, or whatever it is, that is part of Woodstock. So we might want to just be careful with the wording and maybe call out southern piece of LSD, Quebec or something.
Okay.
People were like, I don't know what this is, and I think Jim even got an email from Lakeland Ridges saying what's going on.
Yeah.
I was like, no, it was, there's just a small little bit, that's why.
Right, that's fair. I think we're really, to be very open, we're really struggling with how to convey what happened through local governance reform, how the boundaries were chosen. We're struggling to articulate that. Our kind of approach right now has been, here's this boundary. Are you in it? Are you not in it? That's step one. And then kind of rolling back and saying, okay, well, how did we identify this before? There's so many challenges with that, because even if you go on the province's website, GOMB, for example, doesn't tell you what used to be there, only tells you who's in charge now, which is really, it creates another layer of difficulty. But I appreciate that note, and we'll update it so that, people know if they're included or if they're not included. Even if they find out they're not included, take a look. The similar engagement style is coming their way eventually, so it's good to get this.
Well, in Quebec, so we're going, so many of the kids go to our schools,
Exactly.
play hockey at our, Air Motor Center, so it is important that they probably come to the engagement stuff anyway,
Yeah.
give their opinions.
If you're participating in the community, you're welcome to provide input on what's happening in that community, because you are part of that community, even if your address if you have a different postal code, you know, again, it's a transition period, we've got to figure out how best to do this.
I will also comment that up on the website today too, is a new little tab that says wards. And it has the link for where you can enter your address and it will tell you what ward you're in, because even though we've learned a lot, we're gonna talk about that a little more in item 10.6, but not to jump ahead too far, but we realize that there's a lot of education that still needs to happen, and there's a lot of people that are confused as to even what ward they live in. That was very apparent in the ATV survey, that a lot of people picked Ward 1 for Ward 4, thinking that so there's a lot of confusion out there in general, so I would suggest that everyone just go to that link quickly and you can put your address in. It will confirm what ward you're in and confirm that you're in the town of Woodstock if you're unsure still. And, you know, I'll still blame the province on overall with the reform process, that there was a bit of lack of information in general that still isn't helping us today, but we acknowledge at this point that we are going to have to take ownership on our end. And so I guess as councillors, we can start to continue to encourage people to participate in that survey, and we'll just have to look if we need to continue to help push and get this out there. What can we do on our end? Because it is important that you get enough engagement.
Absolutely. Just a note on the wards. So we're not including the wards on our maps right now, because unfortunately the wards don't match up with any of the boundaries that happened before, which make it, you're looking at a map that includes your former kind of community name, and then if we add the wards on top, it creates, I believe, an even more confusion. And so the plan is right now there's no wards on that map. As we move forward to the next steps, however, you'll see wards come up on the map, and the former place names will recede.
Perfect. Anybody else have any more questions at this moment for Jennifer?
Thank you for giving us a little high level for tomorrow.
Yeah.
I was afraid you were gonna ask me questions, I was gonna be like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, tomorrow, to give you kind of tomorrow you'll be able to see what makes up your new community. We'll have some stats there to understand, you know, how demographics have changed, kind of what the makeup is, as well as all of these other pieces of information. Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody good? Okay, so we're gonna move on to item 10.3, which is the well house update. I'm gonna start with a few comments on this and then pass it over to CAO. So I guess I'll say, and this first and foremost to you too, Jim, as you're reporting on some of these items, but I'd like to start by saying that I'd consider this probably a first of a number of conversations we'll be having around water infrastructure in the coming weeks and months. The Water Billing Special Committee is preparing to present their recommendation to council. I'm hoping that stays on track for April 11th council meeting. But in the research process phase, a lot of questions were raised around the status of the new well house, construction in Grafton, and a timeline for it to be in operation. And in the past 2 weeks, a representative from Dillon Consulting did sit down at my request with myself, the CAO, Deputy Mayor, the Director of Public Works, and the Director of Finance to give us an update. And based on the update that we received, council was briefed last week on the status and in preparation for a briefing to the public tonight. So I'm going to let our CAO, Andrew Garnett, just explain the brief history of the project and the issues we have today that are preventing us from being able to use the new well house today and potentially for the foreseeable future. So I'll pass it over to you, Andrew, if you want to give just an outline, I guess, of.
Okay. Yeah, just, I guess, an update on what has happened and then what, the plan is, moving forward, I guess. Where when and the bottom line is, right now, we can only use that well if it was on an emergency basis and for short term. And the reason for that is that the baseline for the testing of the water isn't what it was, if you will, when it first started. It had changed. Not so much the manganese, I guess, but that is definitely something we will want to take advantage of, making sure we have treatment for that when we treat for the salinity, which is the issue right now at hand. So that number has increased significantly to the point where we won't be able to use it on a regular basis. So with the meeting that we had with Dylan, that's what we're wanting to do now, is we want to figure out how are we going to fix the problem so that we can use the well. We want to use the well just like we use the new well house, like we have the current one, the older one, if you will. So Dylan is putting together a report on I guess it's 2 steps. The first one would be on finding funding so that we can really dive deep into it on how to fix it. So I hope that by this time next week, or definitely by the end of next week, I'll have something for council to see in regards to an application that will be submitted to RDC for the engineering work to be done on that, which of course includes how are we going to fix the problem so we can do it. So Dylan feels pretty confident that the funding line, which I'm just going to take a look at my notes, the Community Development Fund, has a revenue stream for that type of work. So that's definitely step one. Let's figure out how we're going to fix it, and more importantly, what it's going to cost us. So that's the part that it's a little worrisome. Is how much is it going to cost us? So once we get to that point and we know that, then there's another RDC fund. Actually, it's a bilateral agreement funding, which we have used already for the well project. We have got some money through that program to help pay for that. When funding becomes available again, there's talk of more funding being released. As of right now, there's not. That's probably going to be our number one source to look into to help fund that. There's other ways, of course, we could do it, but we'll want to take advantage of as much funding that we can get from other streams to help with it. So it wasn't what we were expecting. There was a lot of work went into first finding a place to do it, and then the actual construction of it took a lot longer than anyone was anticipating. And then when you get to the point you're all pretty well ready to use it, we hit another hurdle. So it seemed to have been one thing after another. So for the next council meeting, we'll have a better scope of that direction, including type of treatment and how long it's going to take to get it done.
So I guess for clarity, just so you hear CAO say to try and solve the problem is the water needs to be treated in order for it to be usable on a regular basis. I would say, just in listening, because this is my second time hearing this, but knowing that people will have questions, to maybe speak more on the, I guess, as far as the project, where it started, what was the original intent for the well, and what, if that is, what changed in that notion, so that people understand kind of when they ask why, the obvious question, which is why wasn't it treated from, or treatment facility in place from the start?
So at the end of the day, regardless of how it's going to be used, what the intent was of the well house, we wouldn't be able to use it because of the change in the salinity numbers. That being said, when the project was first brought forward, It was strictly to be used as a backup source if anything was to happen to our current source. And that was talked about for quite a few years, and what really kind of pushed the fact was quite a few years ago, some of you may recall, the ice taking the causeway out, which left us very vulnerable if we would have lost that water main that ran down the causeway. So the original use was we need a backup source in case it ever happens again. And that's really how the approach was taken. There was no backup power, there was no treatment. They were in hopes because of our current well house that it would have the same water characteristics. Of course, the one that always stands out is manganese. Even though they knew what the original numbers were, it's my understanding that manganese, it's at a certain level and it'll drop, but then it will start to rise, and in time it would have been the exact same what it is at the other well house for raw water. It was basically thought that we'll deal with that when the time comes. I don't believe that anyone thought that the amount of work that would go into finding the site, steps to go through with an EIA, or going to be anything that we had to go through, or that may have been reconsidered from the beginning. So now that scope, original thought, definitely changed as time went on, knowing that Woodstock, even before municipal reform, was growing, and there's more demands for water year after year, and that had changed at some time in the process, that it was not going to be just a backup. It indeed would be a main use. To what percent, not a 50-50 necessarily, but it was definitely going to be used quite often and was not to be treated as a backup. So, and the only reason why that talk was originally, because we're talking this project from the time it started. I remember conversations 7-8 years ago that this has been ongoing. So, but yes, the original intent was strictly for backup, but that had changed because of the need.
Okay, so I guess I'm gonna add a few more comments just from my perspective, because I'm not gonna lie to say that it's not beyond disappointing to hear that after an 8-year project and millions of dollars spent, that we still do not have a secondary water source. So, and on top of disappointment is for me, lack, a frustration just in lack of communication and transparency on this to council and community. Because I know up until really last June, when I think the whole town was out of water for a substantial time frame, that was when a lot of questions were being asked about where is the second water source, and isn't it in use, and why aren't we using it? And a lot of people at that point in time thought it was in use. So there's obviously been a lack of clarity around this. And I will say, at this point, this was news to this current council. So, we have spent, and I will say, millions on the original project, and based on the initial feedback from Dillon Consulting, not having a second opinion, and just based on their initial thoughts, it could be substantial costs more, upwards of multiple millions, to figure out a way to now treat the water from its current location. So without a really clear path forward with how that's going to be possible, which could take a significant amount of time to figure out. If we're going to be transparent right now, we might as well be fully transparent, and the timeline could potentially be 2 to 3 years before we see that usable. So, I would say it's, again, beyond disappointment from this perspective to be in this situation, but at this point in time, we're looking to move forward to how do we fix this, and on the same token, again, I'll say this is gonna be the first of many conversations around water. And we're going to have another one at the next council meeting, hopefully around water billing, what that's going to look like moving forward. And you're going to hear us talk heavily about the capital costs and the, you know, capital projects discussions that we're having, you know, trying to decide on as council and as staff for this year. We're going to have a lot of talk about water infrastructure because we're behind, and essentially we've got an aging infrastructure and an older well that we need to ensure is viable for the foreseeable future. So we have talked with Public Works about what projects we can take on this year, what those would cost, what that cost is going to look like, and what the plan might be for the next 2 to 3 years to secure the source that we have and to start to pick away heavily at the infrastructure for that. So I think, again, this is the first of a number of conversations. At least CAO is hoping to have, you know, for next council meeting, another update from our current engineering consultant, Dylan, on what that process might look like with the funding to at least explore how we can treat the water to start over on the existing well. So I will throw it out to council for questions, comments. I know this was news and an update to all of you last week, and we've had a little bit of time to think and absorb. I will also add, just for the record, we have asked for, or I have asked anyway, for test results so that we can understand what it was that the consultants were seeing back then and why they didn't feel it was necessary to start to treat the water, and then what those test results look like today. I think it's important that we see that, and council wants to see that, and so at this point we have asked for those, and perhaps maybe we'll have better information and knowledge on that for the next update as well. So I'll toss it out to council. If anybody has anything more to add today or thoughts.
So will the process probably be, you're actually this question for CAO, but will the process most likely be they're gonna come back with their first recommendations, or maybe the funding comes through and they get that evaluation done. They'll come back with recommendations after that, and then it will be up to council to decide, okay, it's gonna cost $5 million, for example. Do we start looking at other avenues at that point? Like that will come back to council, which will be at a public meeting, assumedly, that it will be discussed.
Yes, the first one is to make sure that we can find money through this RDC to get them to be able to pay, to do the work, to do the assessment on what has to be done.
Right.
So when that application is done, which we expect very quick, then they'll do that, and then they'll come back and say, okay, this is what we're recommending, probably some options with costing and timeframes.
And I think, to be fair, that process could take a while, because if there's environmental impact assessment amendments that need to be looked at as part of that process, we may not have a really concrete update on a solution for a few months, potentially, depending on what it is they determine we have for viable options and what that may mean. So as much as we'd love to answer this today or in a couple of weeks, I think that we realistically need to set the expectation today that this exploration period could be months, really, before we know if treating the water at the current site is feasible.
Is it possible to, when you're asking for the original testing, to also find out if there was other locations looked at that time and or tested? To know if we have a plan B, if this one ends up being too big of a.
I'll verify, but I'm pretty certain of I forget how many locations were tried, that were unsuccessful because of the amount of water or couldn't get to it.
Okay. And maybe we have new options now with the amalgamation,
Um,
that are just outside. of
Well,
the-
that didn't really matter because we were looking at that.
Oh, okay, well, there you go, okay.
I think we wouldn't remove any thought as to what other options might be on the table, depending on the cost of any solution
right,
that
yeah.
comes up. And if it's a substantially high cost, then, we need to look at, what makes sense. Are there other options taking it? Not that anyone wants to go back to square one, but if it's cheaper, does that,
Yeah,
at a certain point, do we look at something from scratch?
The only thing I'm gonna say is I will be looking for those early test results, because what happened? Why is the salinity levels not good? We gotta find that out. Why that was, maybe we should get a second opinion now, I don't know. But this isn't good, because no one can tell me, like, we're looking for money, here we go again, spending millions of dollars. We've already, I do believe, in past councils, raised the water rates twice to cover money for this project, and still we have no water, so there's some questions that have to be answered here. There really is, because we're just not dealing with a few dollars, we're dealing with millions of dollars here that we've already paid out, and looking towards the future, there's more millions to come. So like, I don't know if the Premier's office has been notified, any of the federal offices have been notified, because I've looking back through my notes, and I do believe like the original, now my figures might be off, I apologize. Well, like, I do believe the original agreement was, the provincial government was in for $799,920. The feds were in for $960,000. And I think the town was coming good for $640,080. Now, those might be rough figures, because I was going through my notes over the weekend, so.
Yeah.
But anyways, my basic point is, let's get to the bottom of this, and if we gotta bring Dylan in here, let's bring him in and put the questions to him, because this is a very serious matter. Because the water is the most important part of any municipality. It's higher than the police. Like, you've got to have water. If you don't have water, you're shutting down. And we're very close. Like, when that one went down there, when that went out, we were very close to losing our water, and everything would have been shut right down. So, I was a big supporter of that project over there.
Mhm.
But it's gone sideways now, and now it's time we got to dig in and clean it up.
Yeah,
Just my opinion.
those are fair statements and
Yeah.
questions. I know Chris and I were trying to, and I guess I'll ask you today, ahead of next, are you comfortable explaining the breakdown and where we're at today as far as costs? Because I do think it's important to be transparent today with what we've spent so far.
Yeah, so the total cost that has come through has been $4.13 million. That was funded a little over $1 million, so
Pretty bang on, Jeff.
$1,017,000 went through gas tax.
You're
Okay.
good.
$1,380,000 was funded by the town, and we took a debenture out of $700,000 of that, and then ICIP and RDC, $1.734 million. So the total $4.1 million from 2015 to 2022.
So we're already 4.1 million, so absorb that, because it is a big number to be sitting here today with no functioning really well. I mean, yes, can we use it in emergency, but as the CAO has said, it is not ideal. It would mean, in talking and asking Director of Public Works, what does that mean? If we needed to use it in an emergency, it would likely mean boil order on the water as it's being used, and short-term use, and the ability only to use it as a short-term because of the high levels on the infrastructure that the water is running through. So really, in my opinion, it's not functioning, not as we need it to be, and we're hoping or expecting that it was. So I think to Councillor Bradbury's thoughts and questions, there are still a lot of questions that need to be answered, and hopefully we'll get more feedback over the coming weeks and have a little more clarity on it. Anybody else have any thoughts or concerns or questions or comments?
I won't speak for Dylan Consulting, but in a couple of questions that I did have I think I'm correct, Andrew, on, yes, the original estimate was around 2 million. Am I correct on that?
He had, I guess what I took away from that was that he was saying that they weren't necessarily sure that that would be the cost of the project, but they knew that they had about $1.8 million of gas tax available to fund it, but that was still kind of, I think, again, this is what I took away from the Jim, not speaking from them, but that's what they kind of started with, the starting cost of the project, knowing they had that funds, but not actually thinking that it would be the actual cost of the project, if that makes sense.
And then I did ask, I can't remember which one I asked, Andrew or Lori, but I did ask if there are any municipalities in New Brunswick that have water that is not treated. The answer was no. Every municipality has treated water.
That was in regards to chlorine though.
Yes. Water treatment plant, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That it's being chlorinated. We're set up for chlorination.
Is it?
Yeah. You can never build one.
Not for manganese and.
No. And that's what when I think it was Rory that answered it, but yeah, that was in regards to chlorination.
So there's still a lot of, like you're right, a lot of unanswered questions as to how it's progressed and the decisions that were made to continue, even though things weren't, like, they just kept hitting obstacle after obstacle, which kept putting the price up. I'm not saying it's anybody's fault, I'm just saying that's what happened. And now we're at $4 million, and nobody knows how much more it's gonna cost.
That's the next step.
That's the next
That's the
step.
next step,
Is
exactly.
try to figure out where we stand with solutions, and option A is X millions. Option B that we are aware of so far today is millions more than option A. So, yeah, and again, just due to any type of project like this, when you're dealing with water and infrastructure and an archaeological location, it's going to take time, not necessarily time to do the work, but time to work through the process, especially where environment's involved. This will involve potentially First Nations again. So those processes they aren't quick. They do take a long time. So we can expect that, this could be 2 to 3 years before we really have a solution in place and a functioning well house that can be used regularly.
I think the important thing, like Deputy Mayor said and Councilor Bradbury, is that all this investigative stuff can be happening simultaneously. Figuring out how do we get here,
Yes.
where did the ball get dropped, if it did get dropped, and just kind of figuring all that out while the other stuff's all in process. Because we can be moving forward at the same time, I think. Yeah, potentially.
I think we all had a consensus the other night that no matter what happens, we're at the point where we have to find more water. Like the development that's coming in the town that we know of, we have to have another water source.
Yeah.
So we've got to move forward no matter what.
Yeah, there's no throwing the towel, so to speak. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's my only question is, at what point are we maxed out with the current system we have, or is there a max out point, or, is there some point you gotta say, whoa, we can't have any more 20-unit buildings because we can't, if the worst case scenario, we don't have volume, it's like running the school on our way?
So the answer is, yes, definitely. I mean, which I'll say that's a good thing because that shows that we're growing, right? So there's lots of interest. Where we're at with that, I'm not sure. Like how much more, say, can we take with that? I don't know the answer sitting here tonight.
Yeah, no,
What that would be, but
well, I mean, I know the towers hold water, but I mean, you always have to plan on the what ifs, the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And you had 100 more residential units in the town, like just the infrastructure you have, and jump to your water tower, I just see.
And we've also talked about, with the next round of the Canada Community Building Fund, projects could be part of that, and one of them definitely that comes to the top is another tank for storage.
We did bring that up in the conversation that day, because I asked outright, should we be looking at another water tower right away?
Right.
Knowing that we need it anyway, probably long term, but even in the short term, now it's even that much more critical. So we did get kind of consensus to look in the, should we be looking at the Eastwood Heights area, and any other areas, just knowing that probably 10 years down the road, they're going to be needed anyway. If that means, and I know you'll hear us repeat, and for community members that are sharp and listening to this, I'm very conscious that water is utility, and utility largely is costed and shouldered by Ward 4. So this is, the burden is largely on Ward 4. However, in looking at the substantial costs, when we talk about the CCBF fund and funds that we're tapping into, resources that really could be shared elsewhere, we have had conversations with Minister Bill Hogan. He's in support of helping us find funding sources outside of that as well. So we will be hunting down every avenue possible to find funding outside of what we rely on for our standard capital for all of our wards. So please understand, recognizing that yes, this water issue is largely a Ward 4 under utility funding issue, but we're in a position now where we're gonna have to use some funds potentially, looking at CBF moving forward, because it does fit under that. So whether a portion of it that would be designated Ward 4 needs to go there, but again, I think there's lots of opportunity out there for funding, and we may need to find someone that can help write and draft, and we might have to hire a consultant to find the money for us. It may be well worth it for us to do that, because staffing is, our own staffing, our own resources are limited day to day, but this is a really important project, and we're talking about millions of dollars. We need to be looking everywhere at the provincial level and federal level for funding. Good to move on from that one. Okay. Next item is Kristen, this one's you, 10.4 finance line of credit restructure.
So in the fall of 2021, so before I came, we switched from BMO to CIBC, and when that switch happened, it kind of just, the revolving lines that were there kind of just mirrored what we have with BMO, and it was just kind of a one pot overdraft that we weren't able to separate what was just our regular operating line overdraft and our overdraft that was specifically for capital borrowing projects that has to go through the capital borrowing board. So like, for example, the well project, so we have to pay all those costs up front before we can take out the debenture or the amort retrofit. So we incur all the costs. So we have to, kind of have an overdraft for those costs before we can get the money from the debenture for those expenses. So we wanted to have a better visibility to what interest is just regular operating interest, what would be utility at the time, what would be your motor. So because again, there's two different funds, so that we can allocate the interest to the right fund, to the right project, and so on. So all this kind of is to make it so that our operating overdraft is going to be kind of one bucket, and then our revolving term facility in another bucket. So this is just going through the motions of making sure that we have it signed, sealed, and I's crossed and T's dotted, or vice versa, to for the bank. So I kind of that. Do you want me to read the motions? Or do you?
I will.
You
Do
will?
you want me to
Okay.
read them?
Yes, absolutely.
I I guess before I read the motion though, I need does somebody want to move? Well, we've got two. Do you want me to do one at a time then?
Sure.
Okay. Do I have someone that would like to make a motion to establish a revolving line of credit on bank account number, oh boy, 0049457.
Don't have to say.
That
it.
there?
I probably should.
Asterisk,
in
number
our-
sign.
It would be nothing that wouldn't be on a check, so
Yeah,
it's not,
they can't take one. 91510 at the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce in an amount of 1 million to be used for general operating requirements subjected to the conditions as outlined. We have a motion. Deputy Mayor, second. Councilor Bradbury. Does anyone have any questions for Kristen before I ask the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, say nay. Motion carried. So we have a second motion on this. Do you need any other further explanation, or I can
no,
just
so that's
say
things.
it's
The
all
1 million
same?
is operating, the 4 million is, so again, the 4 million is obviously a big number, but we cannot, so we will not be able to kind of dip into this money until we have approval. Well, it has to go through council for a motion to go to the municipal capital borrowing board to borrow the money, then have the approval from the municipal capital borrowing board. So there's still a lot of, things to go through even once we set this up that's available to us to actually draw the money from.
Clear as mud? Can I get a motion to establish a revolving term facility at the Canadian Bank of Commerce in an amount of 4 million to be used for interim financing for capital projects as authorized by the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board, subject to the conditions as outlined? Got a mover, Councilor Martin, seconder, Councilor Bellier.
Buzzers. I lost three tonight because I didn't have a buzzer.
Everyone ready for the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, nay. Motion carried. Okay, I'm gonna be real quick with this next one. Paper's buried. Yeah, there they go. All right, so moving on to item 10.5, mining discussion update. So again, this one's going to be brief tonight, but I just wanted to let the community know that council has had presentations from both companies doing mining exploration in the area. And so we're just advising everyone that from what we heard, both companies are really still at pre-feasibility stages and with many steps to go and likely years away from ever having received a proper mining permit and being in a position to actually begin construction. So we would have received from both companies an overview of their project vision and where that vision stands today, which with these types of processes can change all throughout their process. And they gave us a bit of an overall timeline. And as everybody heard, there are so many variables and hurdles that it's difficult for us to state clearly when the community can expect to see and be involved in active consultation by either company. But we did express and push to both representatives that the sooner they start public consultation, the better, and that we are all in agreement. We will not be the conduit of information for them, and they are happy with that because at this point in time, even though there's a lot of information out there, it can be very different than what the end result is going to be. So they need to clear up the questions that people have and also outline the projects when the time is right to do so. I would expect, and again, you have to remember they have to consult as part of the EIA. They must consult public and they must consult First Nations. We're still trying to learn where we fit in the mix of all of that, but as a town council. But I would expect, based on kind of the timelines they gave, and the desire to try and at least clear up any confusion and misunderstanding that's out there in the public today. I wouldn't be surprised to see them start consultation this year at some point, even late this summer or this fall, from at least one company, if not both. So again, that is, if that's happening, that means they're moving on to probably their environmental impact assessment stage, which is a long process, and at the end of the day, they still really have to determine if they're viable. But if anybody is not hearing this out in the general public, obviously manganese is a massive commodity right now, and so I understand why this is happening. Essentially, they're exploring to see if this is possible to mine. Not saying it does not have a big impact on the community and the landowners in that area. I have also reached out to the Minister of Natural Resources and Energy Development to try and connect with them so that we have a better understanding of where we fit in with the EIA assessment process and any other process. As Jennifer Brown had alluded to earlier, we kind of have somewhat of an answer as to what impacts zonings may have on that decision too, and where we fit with that. So again, as kind of we move forward through this zoning bylaw process, that's just something we're all mindful of. So again, CAO had reached out to ask those questions, and I think Jennifer's answered them to the best of her ability, can we say?
Yeah.
At this point. I think they're also trying to understand exactly what this all means. So, but we don't really have anything further to offer today. So that's the update on that. The next item, which is 10.6 future meetings and facilities tour. This is largely for the benefit of council and also for anybody that's still listening at this hour of the night that we've recognized in some of the initiatives that we've been doing, in particular around the pilot project and putting that survey out, that there is still massive confusion among the wards and the general public as to which ward they're living in. And so we had talked way back when, during our orientation and back in January, about doing some meet and greets or doing some council meetings out in some of the wards. So Laura and I have sat down and looked at potential locations and dates, and I guess the discussion tonight is between trying to do some meet and greets in the wards and also try and fit in some facilities tours with all of you. We're targeting Tuesday nights for the foreseeable future, probably April and May, to squeeze in facilities tours. So Tuesday nights that we don't have council, but that we can take the night, and whether the community van takes us to a few locations. And so we're trying to get that mapped out. But we wanted to ask everyone's opinion, I guess, tonight on looking at Sundays for meet and greets. I know weekdays get filled quickly, and we're not always asking that every councillor is at every meet and greet. We understand that, but if Sundays might sit okay with everyone, that's probably what we'll target and what we've been kind of looking at for dates so far. So again, that's through April and May, hoping to maybe have a final one in June, early June. June is very busy in general for everybody, but for Ward 4 in particular at Connaught Park potentially. So I don't know if anybody has any concerns or thoughts on what you're hearing there. I'll open it up to.
And it's a good idea to get out and visit the wards and some of the halls and stuff.
Yeah,
Really get some different people.
get some people out.
Will the request be that, there's like half of us at each one or something
Yeah,
like
it'd be
that?
nice. I think once we can, if everybody's okay targeting Sundays, that gives us a start. Then we'll start to contact everyone and the areas of the locations we've identified in the different wards to try and see what works for them. And then we'll put them back. And obviously we're gonna really try and get the ward representatives from your own wards specifically out, so if we have to do some rearranging to make that happen, we will, but if, you know, at minimum, you know, I will try and be there in attendance and CAO when he can, and then as many councillors as can be. I mean, it'll be a good opportunity. We talked about potentially taking council meetings out, but the logistics to do that now, and I think in reality, this is an opportunity to just have open conversation and let them ask the questions they have, and we'll answer to the best of our ability. And when the questions we get asked that we can't answer, we will write down and continue that process. But does that answer your question? Thank you. Anybody else have any thoughts, questions, concerns? Otherwise, we'll just plug away, and thanking Laura for her assistance reaching out already to some to gauge timeline, and we'll get back to you hopefully maybe even by next council with a schedule, because again, if we're doing meet and greets, we want to get that out there as soon as possible so we can actually get some attendance. All right. And then I guess, oh yes, last one, 10.7 is the finance committee terms of reference. So that was included in your package. We've been a little bit getting this kind of moving, but as everybody can probably appreciate, everybody's really busy, both council and staff. So we do have a draft now in for the finance committee terms of reference, which we would like your approval for tonight. I guess we didn't put a motion for that, but that's not hard to add. Go ahead.
I got 3 comments.
I've got a couple of comments or questions.
Yeah, on the, yes, so did everybody have a chance to read it first and foremost? And go ahead, you go ahead first.
Just three comments
Yep.
or 3 questions, I guess. The shared members will be appointed annually by the committee. Should that not all come through council?
No, because it's, I think what
Because we just appointed PAC members.
yeah, the PAC members are making decisions, so we decided these are standing committees. So essentially, we need a small committee, which we already know. We've already decided in January who was going to participate on the finance committee. The issue is we want some people from the general public, but we're basically saying we're giving confidence in that committee to pick the people that can sit on the committee. These are open meetings. Anyone can attend, right? Anyone can attend the meetings. It's just a matter of to make recommendations back to council. If there's an accountant out there or 3 or 2, we want to reach out to the public to see who might be willing to sit on this committee from the public. I have confidence the committee can decide that, especially because this is not formal like PAC. No one on that committee is making any decisions. This committee is no different than the public safety committee or the building committee, to which both of those will have terms of reference documents as well soon. But, so I hope that answers, does that answer that for you?
That's number 1.
Okay.
Number 2, though, so like, maybe I read this wrong, committee's purview. So there's nobody from that committee that's gonna be making public statements.
Nope.
Because my understanding is either the CAO or yourself.
Yep.
Makes public statements.
Correct.
Okay, so these meetings are open to the public.
Yep.
Okay, so maybe that,
All of our standing committees are technically open.
okay, so standing committees, okay, because
Yeah.
my next question was, if you're gonna bring members of the public in, you're gonna have to go through disclosure, conflict of interest, vet them off. I'd like to actually see the vetting process, that you're gonna have to go through.
Yep, and I think that's probably next ultimately. We're not looking for just people that have opinions. We need credentials, like we need accountants sitting at this committee as part of the. So essentially, and I don't want to say that being rude, people with opinions can come to any meeting or approach us, but when we're trying to get to have people participate at the committee that can provide strong value on some of the things that we want them to look at and that we want this committee focused on with finance, we are looking for some high-level accountants with designations that have experience kind of in finance. So similar to PAC, you're looking for, you know, specific credentials and things like that. But as far as vetting, they're not given any more information than we are, right? All of our finances are public, right? So general public can see our budgets, can see our numbers, and ask the same information. So they're not necessarily being exposed to any information elsewise. We're asking for their thoughts and opinions and guidance on specific items around finance, even just restructuring and things that Kristen's working on in the background. Does that answer your question? Does that help?
I do agree that, Meg, I think that is important,
Yeah.
the conflict of interest, especially like too, is that, you know, just to make sure that, you know, we're not getting, you know,
Yeah.
people who are coming in, you know, with only their own, you know, their own best interests only at hand and kind of pushing that on. So I think that is an important one too, to make sure that it is.
And you have got another, you got another one?
No, I'm all
Oh,
done.
that was it? I thought you said,
I'll let
Kristen, you had a couple
y'all-
comments. So did
Yeah,
we
so
screw some
my
wording up?
questions or comments were, so it lists the chair and the committee manager, so who, I guess in the opinion of everybody, would that kind of be, like who would be the chair and who would be, and then the committee manager, kind of what is the difference almost of the two?
Well, again, we didn't really get an outright, let's say, volunteer when we formed this committee to be, I guess, we have the CAO assigns a committee manager for the committee, which in reality probably is you, in my opinion anyway, but again, that could change if you have someone under your structure you'd rather, but I can't imagine, Kristen, that would largely be you. As far as committee chair, I think that was up for Councillor Martin and I to rock, paper, scissors potentially.
And then you, like, the chair would be a member of council, basically, and the
Chair's
chair
a
would be
member of council, manager obviously staff, because we always want the staff members part. And obviously the CAO is gonna try and attend as many committee meetings as he can, but he's busy too, so we get that. So we definitely need to have a staff member.
And then I guess in kind of the body of the responsibilities, like it does specify development cost charges a couple times, so I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, if we're gonna get kind of specific, maybe we be
You wanna
specific,
change the wording?
like, yeah, well, just like, that would be a small, like, really, that's one of the least, not that we don't have development revenues or
Yeah.
expenses, but just not, like, that's not our biggest, like, even if we put in water sewer, for example, like, that's gonna be a
Yeah.
huge, a much bigger piece of our pie in our utility fund, maybe again, not in our general fund, but like, I just think if we either should be really specific in listing kind of almost everything or nothing at all, like not pinpoint like the development cost charges. And
See where
then,
that one is, Laura,
yeah.
on it's under the list.
And then I did wonder about, like, should we specify how many people from the public, like, do we want to get it, if, you know, if there were
We're gonna
10,
look
10,
at
10
two.
if there were
Mhm.
10 people interested, do we want to just say, no, we're only going to take 2, and then again, choose the 2, because we could be outnumbered pretty quick if we, you know, if they open to
Yeah.
anybody who was interested.
Yeah, I think ideally when we initially talked about it, we were looking for
Yeah.
two members of the public to sit on the committee. Again, the meetings are open to all, you know, obviously any councillor can attend any of the finance committee meetings and share opinion, but always looking for who's actually part of that committee so that, you know, recommendations aren't being put forward if there's not quorum there of that group. So if everybody's okay with it, I'd say Laura might need to take this back, do some amendments, and then bring it to the next meeting to confirm, but at least we're one step further. Okay, so everybody good with that? Anybody else have any questions on that? We'll reword some things and clarify some things, I think, for the benefit of everyone, and then bring it back next meeting. Date of the next meeting is April 11th.
Oh, there's
No.
still the, yeah.
Sorry, 10.8, we added in, yes, truck, my word. Director of Public Works would be very upset that we
Yes,
missed
you would.
this one.
Be here again.
Yeah. Okay, so Kristen, are you taking this one to describe? Yeah.
So, yes, Greg and the utility department is in dire need of a new truck. So, because of the supply kind of chain issues and knowing that we didn't know what would be out there, we put out kind of an invitation for people to let us know what they would have for newer used, spec trucks, a super cab 4x4 1 ton, or, so that was what the ideal for a new truck, and then for a used, he was willing to settle for a 3/4 or 1 ton. So we ended up only getting 3 back, one from Downey Ford in Sussex, which was a used 2018 truck with 124,000 kilometers, which net of recoverable HST would be approximately $54,000. Then we got from CYB Buick, and we got, I should say the name right here, CYB Chevrolet Buick GMC Limited. We got a tender, or we got specs of a 2024 GMC Sierra 3500 HD 4-wheel drive crew cab. Again, net of HST, recoverable HST is $74,000. So $20,000 more than a used truck. And then from SM Repair, they have a 2017 Ram 2500. And it is $64,000. So basically that one we kind of were able to eliminate because it's the oldest and not the cheapest, I guess, basically. So it kind of came down to the conversation of the new from CYB and the used from Downey in Sussex. And we talked to Greg, kind of, you know, because you can make the argument of it's new, no kilometers, whereas the other one obviously used kilometers, but he thought for the $20,000 difference that would get him, yes, he's gonna have to replace the box on the used truck and do some extra work to kind of make it utility specific. So the recommendation would be to go with the used truck from Downey for $54,000.
51 plus 8. No?
No, I was just,
That's, it's net, that is, the 58,000 is total, we get that portion, we get 71.43% of our HST back. No. Changes mind. It was a big decision. Yeah. And I guess the other part of it, the other part of the decision too was the timeliness, is that the new truck wasn't gonna be ready until the earliest August, and he needs it like 2 weeks ago. So that was another big point in wanting to go with the used truck.
Anyone have any questions on this?
I give it that, but those are expensive repair, those 5-year-old ones.
Yeah.
Those engines, and
Yeah.
my recommendation is buy new.
I would second that. Not that that's a motion,
No,
but
I
I
mean,
would be on board.
Well, that's,
The new truck is a diesel, is it not?
No, it's gas.
Was it the
The
new one?
used one is diesel.
The used one's diesel.
The used one is diesel, yes.
That's what you don't want.
Just quickly, can I ask a question?
yeah, you sure can.
What is our policy on purchasing, replacing current equipment? Whether that be trucks, heavy equipment, what be it?
Like a life, kind of like how long do we usually keep things
Yeah.
before we don't have one?
We will. That's part of asset planning.
Do we have an idea what direction we wanna go? Kind of, like,
Well,
should we base this decision on kind of where we wanna see things go
so
in
if
the
I
future?
listen to what the Director of Public Works has commented a bit lately, is potentially looking at leasing moving forward instead of purchasing. Because even in looking at police, and interestingly, that came up this afternoon in a different conversation, but we purchase police vehicles largely now, but yet we're always trying to cycle them out within 4 or 5 years. And though, leasing seems like a a larger amount upfront, really, when you can turn and get something new in 4 or 5 years, maybe that, even though the cost, you're gambling if you're thinking you're gonna get another 5 or 10 years out of the vehicle now. I think just, we know that as homeowners, and we have our own vehicles, and I don't know anybody that's bought an appliance lately, but it sure doesn't last like they used to, so I think that's kind of a world we're in now, where we're trying to analyze, and I will say, the Director of Public Works has given a lot of thought to whether we should be looking at leasing equipment, especially our heavy equipment. So he is going to be doing some looking at that in conversations moving forward, especially for, asset management planning, and also for budgeting for next year. So again, I guess the biggest concern, and I can see why, I'm gonna guess he originally wanted to go with the purchase.
So I think he, it was that, obviously because of cost and because of the restraints in the budget this year, was that probably wasn't going to be able to swing a brand new truck for the cost of them. Then when we looked at what came in, that was my thought originally too, was that, for $20,000, it probably just makes sense to go with a new truck. But I think the main driver is the time, he's in dire need. So I think that's what his driving. So he's not going to, I don't think be disappointed if it's like, no, we want to get you a new truck, but it's just there's gonna have to be something done in the meantime to get him through. So I don't know what that looks like. Like, he did originally say that he thought he could do some juggling around of things, but he was gonna need, I think, another used truck bought to fill a void somewhere else. So.
Do they have the new truck in stock, or does it have to be ordered?
It has to be ordered.
And what's the time frame?
They said early as August.
So it's almost through the summer, so that's, I think, probably where he's struggling with not wanting to wait and is willing to go, with Ford over.
The only other option you could potentially look at would be, renting a truck for 6 or 8 months.
I think and that might work for at least the term, like rejigging things, because the problem is that he needs to, he's gonna have to customize this truck for, I don't know.
Maybe put the lift on it.
Yeah, something utility.
Yeah,
need,
he's gonna do
but-
stuff with it after. Yeah, so this might not even, I guess, on that note, if you look at Councilor Martin, you might be able to comment on this further in CAO, like, at the end of the day, even leasing something like this, if he's got to customize, gonna do a bunch of work to it after, could this one even be leased?
I'm not sure.
You can only do so much. I mean,
Yeah.
whatever you can bolt on, that can be bolted off. I mean,
It has to be taken off.
But you wouldn't get anything. You're talking like a short-term lease until a new truck could be ordered.
No, but even just leasing in general, like,
I think you can to a limit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can. Yeah, I'm sure you can.
Well, and there's some vehicles that you can, I know we lease our vehicles, and there are some vehicles that you might have to get them from Ontario or something, but would have like a lift already on it. You're leasing one that has a lift or something like that, so we lease them with cabs already on them.
what are you thinking, CAO? Are you thinking we should take it back?
Well, so that's the way, I mean,
Yeah,
I'd be so nice to have the new one. However, that one isn't as bad. I had it in my head, it was like 200,000.
Originally, so I asked Greg how many kilometers on the used one, and originally he in his mind it was 200,000. And again, like I said, I was like, oh, I think that's far too many to get into a used truck. But then it was less bad at 124,000. So.
But that's not on the deal.
No.
I just like the 2 comments, I guess, or 2. It's always nice to have the new. I guess that one isn't that old, and I understand the need for it to have it now. I assume Greg has an idea on how much work it's going to need. Or it's not that it needs work, he needs to modify it to do the job.
He needs to put a new box on it, and then,
So that may have to happen with the new one too.
yes, it would.
You want to fit it for him, to customize it.
Yeah, so I guess that part, I thought I was thinking at first it had to do just because of the condition of the box. But if he has to modify it, I guess that part doesn't matter regardless if it's new or used, it's gonna be the same.
Yeah.
Did he give us any idea how much fuel he runs through the current truck? Because that's something I'd be looking at, is diesel's much more expensive than gas. If he puts a lot through, that could be a savings in itself, with the gas engine over the diesel.
Yeah.
But he might not put very much through.
Is
All
it
diesel, I think.
Is his,
Isn't it?
no, I think,
Let me look.
250 a diesel?
The new one's a gas, so they use.
Yeah, I think it is, yeah.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm just, I mean,
Gas
they might,
engine.
they might not put much through it anyway, but they're putting it.
I don't know that myself. But,
are the current trucks diesel or gas, do you know? The current trucks and utility?
would be gas, I
Summer,
think,
summer,
yeah.
aren't they?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think.
I thought that was.
I think I can
Sounds like
quickly
it.
look here.
I'm sure somebody's done their homework and looked into the background of these, but I can just tell you from my own experience, the good is gone out of 2017.
Yeah.
The good is gone. They're expensive to maintain after that point. They're either gonna be really good or they're gonna be.
It's a 1 year newer.
Yeah,
So might as well get a new one. It's my experience too.
yeah. I will say, I hate last minute
Me too.
for this reason, because ultimately, we have no recommendation from staff on this, and I appreciate, I thought this was clear cut, we knew what we wanted, which is why we were squeezing it in tonight, and I appreciate that we're trying to get this remedied so we can move forward as quick as possible, but I don't know about anybody else's comfort level, but I'm thinking maybe we need to have a little bit more conversation and maybe staff take this back and decide and come back with a confident recommendation that why, I think there's been some valid points raised, and we've had conversation around leasing, so do we start that conversation too, even with
The
this?
only issue we'll have is that those trucks will be gone.
I know, and that's the panic with the timing, and, it's not saying we couldn't do a special meeting, I just
Yeah.
don't know if anybody's comfortable making this decision tonight.
The new one should still be available, though, shouldn't it?
Oh,
New
Oh,
ones
yeah,
are
yeah,
being-
yeah, no, the other two,
So-
they'll be done by. I think actually, I do recall a conversation with Greg was doing some homework on it, that, perhaps the one from Downey's actually being.
It's gone.
No, just being hung on to.
Until we get confirmation
Yeah.
tonight.
Mm. So there's that, but again,
Do you
it's
have
up.
do you have a picture of the one by chance that's useful?
Yeah, well,
The down,
Just-
down St. John?
just
Just a little picture.
I'd say that's
That's
generic.
the same one for all of them.
Yeah, no joke.
Oh, just
Yeah,
the
St.
stock
John.
photo on the side, John.
It's just the stuff.
Probably
It's
on.
not an actual photo.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So, you know,
And the new one, that quote doesn't include HST, does it?
Is it Sussex?
That's why you're saying
St.
it's
John.
20,000.
It-
Sussex, yeah.
it does, yeah.
Sussex. Then for-
It does?
Wait, more than one, or is it always been?
$10,600.
There we go.
600.
Oh, I see, I was
But
looking
we,
at the last
oh, you
year's
get a
and last
portion of
year's.
that back, so.
So the true question, Christian, are the brand new GM or the 2017 Ram?
No, sorry, the 2018 Ford.
Ford, yeah. He doesn't like the Dodge. We had that conversation. No offense to the Dodge people. Okay, so to not keep dwelling and, do we wanna just shelve this, and then if we have to, call a quick,
Is the Ford diesel?
Yes.
yeah,
I just- I'm not sure.
No,
Well,
I
he
thought-
told me it was diesel, I guess.
Yeah, the Ford's diesel.
6.2 liters.
Yeah, the new one is gas.
Two
the
valve
new is gas.
V8.
And it's got 120,000 on it, Ford does?
Yeah, 123.7 total.
I mean, that's the market right now, right? Your used vehicles are at a premium right now, so we're still paying substantially for them with a life expectancy that's a lot less, so.
I'm not in conflict, but we're selling one very equivalent to that for less money. That's why I say, if you want my opinion, you gotta take with one.
Okay, so do we have consensus that we're not comfortable, with this tonight, we'll throw it back to you guys to sort out. CAO, what do you think?
Can I ask another quick question?
Sure.
What is wrong with the truck? Is there a repair we could make to get through to September? Or if we were to order a new truck?
I would say that he must think that the cost of that repair would just be not worth it based on, like,
Whatever quote he's been given for the repair.
And or the
Transmission was
part,
slipping, I believe, was that,
Yeah.
I think he said something about transmission.
Yeah, I think he did.
yeah,
2 meetings ago.
I just know that again, he again said this morning that it's again, it's in his, like, so dire that he still probably is going to have to,
figure
Like,
something out.
yeah.
So
Let's table this.
let's table it, and if we can make a decision tomorrow, let us know. We don't have to have every meeting with everybody in this room, and if people can
so I
phone
guess
in, and
what,
we could
would
do a
be-
special meeting. if we
Do
need
we
to.
have Greg come talk to us?
If we wanna wait until, or if we wanna have a special meeting, if people are able to do that, but tomorrow's,
Does anybody plan on attending tomorrow night at
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
presentation?
Yeah,
I think
I'll-
I'm gonna plan on being around for that.
is everybody going tomorrow night?
Yep.
So worst case scenario, we could, scoot here after really quick. If everybody's in agreement on that, if we're ready to, and we
Yeah.
have a proper,
I don't know if he'll,
No,
no?
we need so much time.
We have notice.
Oh, we need 48 hours.
Or, is it 48?
could we get him on the phone? I mean, he had, to me, right before this meeting, he said that he thought we should go for the used truck, so that was just.
I can get him on the phone if you want.
Go for it. This would be a first.
Pause.
You're live.
Yeah, please tell me.
Yeah.
Speakerphone and
That friggin'
mayor.
Saying now,
I think that's what
Greg
mine
said we
is.
can do, Greg saying now, there's gotta be, like, that's a sense of urgency he doesn't normally say.
He'll also always hear.
Yes, sir, how are ya? You're on speakerphone,
And live.
in council. There you go.
Kristen, do you want to outline? I guess, Greg, we're debating whether, we shouldn't just buy the new truck, but I know the issue is, the biggest concern is time. If money isn't the factor in this moment, what can you explain to everyone the condition of the used truck that you want and what your thoughts are there, and is it the dire need to have it sooner rather than later?
That's the biggest, the truck that they went and seen is in excellent shape. I never seen it, but pictures I've seen of it, there's nothing wrong with it. It does have 120,000 kilometers on it, but, as far as being in good shape, they checked it all over and it's all good that way. We do need the truck to be able to start pulling pumps again, so, and get something back in place, so. It's just the dire thing more than anything right now, but we had a way around it. We'd definitely probably go with the new one. But,
Is it the
I don't know
transmission?
what other way we can get around it for the time being to make it work.
And the truck that this is replacing, is it the transmission that's gone?
Yeah, the whole thing, it just needs replaced. The fuel tank fell off of it. And the frame and everything's starting to go, so the transmission's slipping, so there's no sense in putting any more money into that.
Yeah. Understood.
Just ask them on average, how many
Uh,
kilometers. you put on
I
a particular
can
year.
talk it over a little bit more tomorrow, maybe we can figure something out if we could get pulling pumps. I guess it wouldn't be a dire need for it, but, that's the biggest thing is to be able to get back pulling pumps and stuff again more than anything.
Deputy Mayor's asking how many kilometers you think you put on that, where it's got 120 something now. Kind of what are you thinking for a year?
Probably maybe 10 at the most, probably.
10,000?
Yeah, no kilometers.
A year?
We don't put a great deal
I think that's
on
what
it.
we can-
I can see the actual based on the last 6 months, or can't get the fuel system in here.
Yeah, more than anything, so.
Yeah, so it's
I hate to hold off and lose that truck.
I know, are we afraid we're gonna lose the used one more so than the new one? The new
Yeah,
one's being ordered?
there's no guarantee that that new one could even be here in August, right? That's the biggest thing we're up against. But, I can check, maybe we can find another one somewhere too.
Greg, are
It's
the,
probably the best one we've come across in quite a while, so.
are the current trucks that are in utility, are they diesel or are they gas?
Are the current trucks in utility, are they largely diesel or gas?
They're both diesel.
They're both diesel.
And that's not a big stipulation on it, doesn't necessarily have to be diesel.
No, I was just curious.
More or less the one ton more than anything, but, or a good heavy 23/4 ton would probably do it too. But it's just, we've looked and there's not a whole bunch of anything around really.
No, we know. There is, we talked about that before.
But if
Talked
there's
about that, no one
like if you
time
want us to
around.
hold that, we can definitely hold that. That's not a, we'll just have to figure another way of pulling the pump. Maybe I can get a boat truck somewhere for a time or two. I'd like to, the idea of the new truck too, you got more working on it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but then you gotta, whatever we get, we gotta put a body on too, right?
Yeah.
So, we're looking at probably another 15 to maybe even 20 for that, so. I was trying to think that maybe we can get by.
Right.
5,000 cheaper with the used ones also.
We probably want to use.
And we'll probably get.
Yeah.
10, 15 years out of it anyway. That last truck's 2006, so. And it was bought used when it was bought, so.
We just don't wanna get another situation though where we're doing this in 10, 15 years. You know,
Yeah.
decide do we go new or used?
Yeah, well,
I get the urgency though.
Yeah.
If he needs it
Yeah.
urgently, he needs it urgently.
If you can't make do, you can't make do, but
Yeah.
you could.
No, I think Andrew said, buy this one, buy a new one.
Buy them both.
Buy them
both,
both.
Sell the
because
used
we're
one when the new one
enemies.
comes.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I had that thought too, is the
Yeah, we could
customizing
sell
of
it.
it, that's a
Yeah,
problem.
because he did just say, did you just say we're gonna, once we have it in hand, we need to spend another 15 to 20 to,
Yeah, 15 to 20 to put a body on it, so, cause that box is on, we'll sell the box, of course.
Or could you keep the box and put it back on?
No, probably not.
Okay.
Probably just sell it, cause by the time we get ready to get rid of it again the next time, it's gonna be in the shape of the one now, so. By the time, the rest of the truck won't fit, put a new box on, you know what I mean?
So, Greg,
Try and find a spot to store it somewhere where it's not gonna get damaged.
would the box fit on, so if we bought the used truck and you built a box, would it fit on the new one too?
I don't get what you mean, I guess.
So if we bought the used truck and you built a box and put it on it, and then
Yeah.
sometime down the road, we bought a new truck, would that box fit on the new truck?
It's possible if we bought a box, yeah.
We probably have to do the same make truck though.
Yeah.
That's not.
If you decide to stick with the Ford.
But I can probably sell that one. I gotta get somewhere to put it on.
I thought they were just swearing. That's the point.
happens to me all the time.
We're probably better off selling the box. But anything we've been talking to, we probably get $3,000 to $4,000 out of that box, but towards the new box for the used truck.
Yeah.
So, to try and keep that stored somewhere where it doesn't get damaged.
Yeah.
If we had a spot, we could put it in the back of a boat somewhere, make it all right, but.
Okay, are we good? Anybody else have any more questions, or can we, okay, thank you.
Okay.
We'll leave you alone. Yeah.
What has he been doing so far? When it
Getting
happened?
by.
Plan B, payloader to pull it on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I seen it, we were sitting here one day, and went, actually one evening, and went by with the you know, stinger, the arm on it, to use it, and it's hard because it's, well, the truck, you're right there, right?
Yeah.
The boom, the guy in the loader doesn't even see, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I will say, anytime we ever have conversations with the director of public works, he is always very cost conscious, more so than it's like drag on the word, like just stop beating around the bush, buy it because it's necessary, right? So I do feel like, you know, from my perspective, it sounds like a critical purchase and maybe we can get this and then decide, do we go ahead and order a new truck anyway? And what does that mean? And can we do that? And
Or do we order one late summer so we get it in
Exactly.
January next budget?
Yeah, squeeze it into.
I think he's
next
desperate,
year.
I mean, he's.
Yeah,
I think he has, he needs it.
yeah, so, okay, now, is everybody comfortable after talking with the Director of Public Works to make a motion?
I think you made it pretty clear.
Yeah. Okay, could I get a motion to award the truck tender to Downey Ford Sales in the amount of $51,181.24 plus HST as recommended by the CAO, it says. Maybe the Director of Public Works, but.
Director of Public Works.
Councillor Williams has moved it. Do we have a seconder? Seconder, Councillor Bradbury. Everybody ready for the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded say nay.
Nay.
Yep. So we'll record that. Motion carried. Okay, and that does put us to the end of our regular agenda. As always, we have a couple items in committee of the whole. So the date of our next meeting is April 11th. And could I get a motion to move to, yes, right? Yes, a motion to move to committee of the whole.
Sure.
Seconded by Councilor Lee. Everybody ready for the question? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
His eyes are closed, Lauren. His eyes are way closed.
Let's take a question.
Yeah.